Hello, my name is Philip Knight, and today we're going to talk about the Revolutionary War. The Revolutionary War is the reason that we are the free country that we are today, and this is how it transpired. Um, I just want everyone to understand the fight for our freedom and how it got started. Um, and it's a very important event in our country's history. Um, I used the History Channel as well as the Journal for the American Revolution and Lloyd's Searle Library to find my sources. Um, and the points are how the war got started and the actual fight itself. Um, at first, the start of the Revolutionary War, there is colonization. So it started with Christopher Columbus finding America and going back to Spain and telling them there's riches there, and everybody kind of flocked to there trying to find money. Um, the British then got involved with the going to there to get money. But the first actual few settlements were more freedom based than money based. They were there for religious freedom or just freedom from Britain itself. They, they're the British, while trying to find money, ended up finding tobacco and how much people love tobacco, which gave them a lot of money. So Britain continued to put resources into the Americas, specifically North America. There ended up being 13 colonies. The first were settled in Virginia and Massachusetts, um, and then a long while down the road there became taxation. There had always been taxation, but there was specifically taxation more than there was before, and they could smuggle stuff in and out. Where now it became a whole lot harder to smuggle stuff out than it once did, or smuggle stuff in. Um, the Britain had had several fights with several different countries, so they used America to get the money for the money that they paid for the fights. They used them, and because they were in a lot of debt. Um, Colonies also, it upset them. Like they're having to pay more money than they would before. Plus, again, the smuggling. But it first started with the Stamp Act of 1765, which put stamps on pieces of on paper products and made them pay for the stamps and then put stamps on the products. So they had to pay people had to pay more money to get the products themselves. Um, and then there was the Tea Act of 1773, which, funnily enough, lowered taxes on tea, but it also made the colonists feel like that Britain could tax anything. It's tea. It's readily available. It's drunk constantly, um, which upset people and eventually led to the Boston Tea Party, which is where um, the people who were mad, the colonists that were mad, um, some of them dressed up as Native Americans, gone to a ship filled with tea, and dumped all the tea into the Boston Harbor, which made Britain lose a whole lot of money. So they then instituted the Intolerable Acts, which was a series of taxes and acts that made America mad, um, such as like the Massachusetts Government Act, which forbid self government in Massachusetts, and then there was the Quartering Act, which made the colonists allow any British soldiers that wanted to stay in their house to stay in their house. Um, and this actually was, I would say, this is what I would say the beginning of the Revolutionary War was. That's what history says as well, because it led to the First Continental Congress, which was the first actual colonial wide government. It was a group of governments trying to stop these taxes, and then later on led to the Second Continental Congress, which is where the Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, 1776. But there was fighting a year prior, almost a year prior. Because the first battle actually took place on April 18th, 1776. So it was there was fighting going on while they were signing the Declaration of Independence. Um, the first the first battle was actually the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which started April 18th, 1775, as I said earlier, and ended the very next day. It wasn't a very long fight. It wasn't a very long battle, but it was fought in Massachusetts. It was an American victory. Um, and this is actually where Paul Revere went through saying the British are coming, the British are coming. Didn't actually say that, but that's what people want you to think. Um, but this was later coined the Midnight Ride. It was actually not one big battle. It was a series of skirmishes, fight all around Lexington and Concord. It was actually Lexington, then Concord, and it was the British were trying to seize weapons from the colonialists so they couldn't fight back. And we're also trying to take two people who were the big part of the revolution as captives to try them for, I think it was treason. Other important battles were the Battle of Bunker Hill, June 1775 in Massachusetts, which was a British victory, but while being a British victory, the British lost a lot of troops. So it definitely dwindled their troops a good bit. Then there was the Battle of Quebec in December 1775 in Canada, which was a major colonial defeat. There was also the Battle of Charleston in June 1776, which is in South Carolina, which is a British defeat, and the British were actually trying to take the port, which was a major port, but they failed. Um, then was the Battle of Trenton, December 1776 in New Jersey, which was a colonialist win and give a big boost of morale after all the previous defeats that they had faced. Is also where you see the painting of George Washington on the front of the boat with the American flag. That was actually the Battle of Trenton. And then the turning point with history is seen as the Battle of Saratoga, which was October 1775 in New York. Britain were trying to separate New England, which is where a lot of the colonialists was in the New England territories, and they were trying to separate them from the rest of the colonies so they could kind of pick them off themselves, and they didn't have to worry about people flanking from the other sides. And this was actually supposed to be a three-pronged attack. So people were supposed to come up from Canada, um, to the east, and then to the north, and supposed to just separate them into and just take all of New York pretty much. But only one of them showed up. So the one from the north, which was from above New York, a little bit outside of New York into Canada, and there was only one, and he had the guy and all of his troops had to ride all the way down, and they were trying to take Albany, New York, but he was constantly fighting along the way to there because the colonialists could see that he was coming down through there, so they were fighting him. But he then got to Freeman's Farm, which is actually the Battle of Saratoga is actually two battles, not just one. And it's the first battle was the Battle of Freeman's Farm, which is where the British were stopped at Freeman's Farm. The British actually won, but the colonials retreated. But it was a small group of people who were fighting. It wasn't all the colonials that were there at the time. It was just a small group of them trying to slow their attack. And then there was the second battle, which is the Battle of Bemis Heights, which actually the British stayed at Freeman's Farm for a while because they were low on supplies. We were waiting for reinforcements. While they were doing that, the colonialists were getting reinforcements and were continuing and they were continuing to being supplied by items. Um, so eventually, the British came and attacked. Um, but at that point, the colonialists had a lot more numbers than the British, um, and the British retreated. Um, the colonialists then followed them in their retreat, and it was the first major surrender of the war for the colonialists, um, and was actually the first major battle that the colonialists won. And it also helped to show they were talking. Benjamin Franklin was talking to people in France and in Spain to try to get them to help, because if they helped them, then they would get a lot more of the resources than what British would be getting. It helped them to show that they actually could win this thing, and helped to show the colonialists that they could actually win it. And the other major battles of the second half of the war was the Battle of Rhode Island, which was a colonial defeat, and kind of stopped colonial momentum from the Battle of Saratoga. And then there was the Battle of Kings Mountain, October 1780 in South Carolina, which was a colonial win against loyalist forces, which is people who were in America that agreed with Britain. So they were kind of fighting their own people there. It also made Britain like rethink their strategies in the South, because most of the battles were fought up north, but then they came back to the South and was trying to fight battles there. And then there was the Battle of Cowpens, January 1781 in South Carolina, which was a turning point in the Southern campaign, and the colonialists won it. And then there was the Battle of Yorktown in October 1781 in Virginia, which was a huge colonial victory. The British surrendered, and that was the last battle of the Revolutionary War. They surrendered with help from France, and the victory of this war is the reason we are here today. I just hope that you now understand more about the Revolutionary War, that you learned something. And the war that was fought was a war of independence and the rights of citizens, which is very important. So yeah,